into some religion.
Sure.
Sound good? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So I didn't really come with a plan this time, and except I did come prepared. I am wearing my holy socks. I don't know if you can see them, but
I can see. Yeah.
I'm prepared with my holy socks. So, but what I did come with is some thoughts and some ideas and maybe some questions surrounding religion, because I I think it's such a big topic on the planet that it would almost be unrealistic to say let's cover five major religions today, and even to get into their essential natures, their essential characters, those sorts of things, right? Hello, Sachin, welcome.
Hey, yeah.
Hey everybody, good morning.
Hi. Hiya.
Good morning. Just getting started. You haven't missed anything except for the fact that I did come prepared by wearing my holy socks. So that's what makes a holy.
Oh, yeah. I was about to say, why are they your holy socks?
That's I mean, if you deal in religion, you have to have a part of you that's holy, right?
Oh, okay, right, yeah.
Holy socks, yes. Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. But what is religion? Well, okay, so two questions, three maybe. Number one, what is religion? Number two, what purpose does it serve? And number three, are you religious? Do you consider yourself religious? It's funny because with people these days, younger generation, typically, you ask the question, are you religious? And you'll either get yes, and then they'll start to preach to you about their religion, right? Or you won't get no. What you'll get is, oh, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual, generally. And what that really means is it's a fancy way of saying I'm unique like everyone else. You see what I mean? Because because it's a bit of an avoidance of the question, because then it's like, oh, you're spiritual. And I think realistically speaking, that is a very big hat to put on, to say that you're spiritual, because I don't think most people realize what spirituality in the universe is versus what religion is. It's very, very, very high up the bar. Usually when someone says that they are spiritual but not religious, what they're really trying to imply is that they take a bit from here, a bit from there, a bit from over there, they throw away that bit, and it's become their way of saying that I am engaged in a personal religion. But really, I would argue that that's not the case in most respects. Generally speaking, I think gathering bits and pieces is like going to an antique shop and picking up trinkets. Oh, I like this piece, but I don't like that one. This will look nice on my mantle, right? And it begins to get loaded into the personality of someone. And this is, I think, where religion can go wrong, because there's two aspects to us. There's the essence or the core of oneself, and then there's the personality, everything that's sort of cluttered on the outside, right? And I had a great conversation with Stuart yesterday, and we were talking about how sort of in the early days of Eamon and all that type of stuff, so much get away from me was put on the idea of the culture and the personality and such. And it's not really like that, because it really depends. It's not what you do, it's why you do it, right? That's kind of one of the fundamental rules here. Having a personality is absolutely vital to one's growth and development, because if you don't have one, if you're just born as, well, you are born primarily as essence only, but if you don't actually acquire these kinds of layers of reference and these and things to struggle with and all these sorts of things, right, that end up becoming these kind of layers and layers and layers upon oneself, you have no resistance in life. You have nothing to push against. And if nothing has, think of a balloon for a moment, right? A helium balloon. A helium balloon is pushing against the membrane, the rubber membrane of something. But as soon as you pop it, what happens to all that? It spreads out as wide as it possibly can throughout the room, and it's no longer even detectable, is it? It's no longer detectable as a helium balloon or even helium. In a room this size, it's going to become dispersed. And so having resistance, having something to push against, having something to put oneself against is actually a very vital aspect of growth. Plants, for instance, I visited Seattle many times. In fact, I lived there, Sachin, for a while. And one of the things that really struck me, because Colorado is fairly arid, right? It's fairly dry. It's difficult to get things to grow here. But in Seattle, life finds a way absolutely everywhere. Like you walking down the sidewalk and, the sidewalk is being broken apart because plants are wanting to reclaim their territory, right? Where someone put a sidewalk. And that struck me as just amazing, because you think about how much struggle and how much, faith would be the wrong term, because that's a human characteristic of a cosmic event, but how much faith, cosmic faith, it takes for that little plant or that bit of moss to know that if it smashes its way through the concrete, it will find sunshine eventually, right? I mean, it's a beautiful thing. It's that sort of resistance that makes hardiness, right? This is why we prune plants even. We say, no, you grew too much, and we chop bits and pieces off of them, and then they go, I'm even bigger, I'm even stronger now. Yeah, they come back. So life here, not everywhere else, but life here is a crucible where things have to pit against something in order to actually grow, in order to flourish, in order to do something. So I don't buy this whole bit that, personality is evil and essence is good. It's not really like that whatsoever. It depends on how you use it and what you do with it. So, are you religious? Well, let's skip that one for now. What is religion? Who wants to take a stab at just, kind of like what comes to mind when you think of someone asks you on the question? Imagine me standing there with a clipboard, and excuse me, sir, can I just ask you a couple of questions as you're walking by me in the mall? Okay, sure. Number one, are you Democrat, Republican, liberal, communist, right? And they answer that question. I go through 5 or 6 more questions and then say, so are you religious? What would you say?
I think
Now,
there is.
remember, I've got a clipboard, so I can't. You can't get away from me. You know what it's like, right? When someone catches you and they've got a clipboard, they don't let you escape. So, yes, Sachin, I'm not going to let you escape.
Straight up question, I would say I'm not religious, and because the question is tainted by what is the general definition of religion as most people know it. And that definition, from I've been to churches, I've been to mosques, I've been to Hindu temples, I haven't been to synagogue yet, but every time I've gone there, there is a
Shangri-La?
no.
What'd you say?
A synagogue. I haven't been to a synagogue.
Synagogue. Okay, I thought you said
synagogue. Sorry.
yeah. I thought you said Shangri-La. I was like, okay.
No, Shangri-La would be nice. I haven't been to Shangri-La.
Yeah.
So I mean, from all of every place that I've gone to, in the beginning, I've usually gone there because I was in need of some usually emotional or mental support. Every time I've gone there, I did get that support, so that was good. So I did get that support. I got that uplifting. I got that kind of feeling of community. So that part was good. But almost every time, if I went there 3 or 4 times, then I started to realize it was hollow. It was just, on the top. It was just like people coming together and having a good time and support, but there wasn't any depth to it. The people I was speaking with, the pastor or the priest, whoever, they were going through the motions. They didn't really understand what it really meant to be, like what does it really mean to be religion. They were just parroting somebody else's talk. They were just reading through the Bible and putting their own implementation or whatever it was doing. I'm not saying they were crap.
Yeah, let me ask you this then. Do you think, or do you suppose that at some point in time, someone along the way did know what they were doing, and it would have been different, like say 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago? Would it have been different then for you?
I don't know about 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. I think it would have been different if I'd actually listened to the person who founded the religion. It got very quickly. I think it lost value very quickly. I think within one generation, maybe not one generation, maybe within 2 generations or 3 generations, as the message kept being passed on, it got so diluted and so different from what it originally was that it just I think it's no longer the right message.
Right. So what you bring up is a very interesting point, and it causes me to want to look at the word religion in and of itself, because before anything can be discussed, we have to agree on what things are, right? Kind of a set of language patterns. So let me switch here, if it does. Yeah. Try one more time. There we go. Good, good. Okay. So let's take the word religion. And there's an associated word with it as well. Three parts broken up into syllables. What does re usually mean in English? If you
again
Huh?
or repeat again
Yeah.
or repeat.
Right. So we have repetition. Does anyone know the Latin root for this part of the word? It means, sorry, I'm looking at you over there because that's where I see you. It means to bind. It's like the same root word as ligature, right? You watch these crime shows. Oh, she's got ligature marks, that sort of thing. You understand? So lig has to do to tie or to bind. Oops, bind. All right. And then ion. And this is where language gets very interesting. What's an ion?
I'm assuming you don't mean from the scientific point of view. This is
Don't
word is
assume.
older.
Don't assume.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't assume.
Well, this word is older than the concept of ions, or this part is older than the concept of ion. The concept of ion is 200 years old.
Let me reverse it real quick for you, just for a second, because what if ion was named because of what it does? Right. In other words, they didn't name it George. They didn't name it Fred. They named it ion because of the kind of the
Something on me, so I on or something that I am on as a person, maybe.
It literally has to do with an electrical charge or the passage, presence, or movement of force. We'll get into what
Really?
each kind of nature, especially vowels. Vowels are very powerful in what they carry. They carry the essence of the communication, right? If you don't have vowels, you can't power your speech whatsoever. But you can say electrics or passage of force. Of force. Okay, shortcut that. Now, this has to do with a sun level aspect. This has to do with a planetary aspect. And this literally symbol has to do with the passage of force. Like in Egyptian times, they turned it on its side. They would have these kind of things, saying that God is like zapping things or Ra. So what do we have? We have a repetition of a binding condition that involves the passage or movement of force. Right? If we look at it from this perspective. What's another associated word? So religion is the event itself. But I would think in the beginning, Sachin, like you were talking about, it would just be Lygion, right? If you're talking about the first event of it, did it go away?
The camera's moved, yeah.
Change focus.
Yeah.
Don't know what happened.
Okay. Hopefully it stops moving around on me. So wouldn't it be this, Lygion, right? If it's, it's trying to detect me. Okay, got it. I'll stop touching the chalkboard. You're smart. That, right? It would be minus this part, wouldn't it? If it was in the initial aspect of itself. because it had not gone into repetition just yet, had it? What's the other word that's very similar to this? So there's religion, and I asked if you are religious. So we have this again. Talk about this. So again, we understand this. We understand this. But instead of ION, now we have IOU. What does IOU imply? Language is very important. And Sachin, I think you're going to really enjoy this, because I think this is the first time we've really talked about the power that sits behind, or I should say, yeah, the power that sits behind the vowels and the essence that lives in the consonants of any language, not just English. IOU, what does that mean in our terms?
Sun, planet, and moon.
Well,
It's a
not,
debt. It's a debt.
It's a debt, right? And the reason why it's a debt, right? If you borrow some money, you give the person an IOU. And yes, it is IOWEYOU, but it's abbreviated to this. And part of the aspect of that is because it taps into three portions of what you are as an entity. You have I representing the sun. We'll talk about this a lot when we get into religion, because the sun is a bar through time, but it also has a dot aspect to it. Sometimes when looked at head on, looks like that, okay? The O is a planetary condition, and U is lunar. We'll draw it actually like this. The lunar aspect to a person. In psychological terms, you could call it unconscious, unconscious, semi-conscious, and conscious, right? The aspects of things. But if you take the brain and divide it into 3 bits here, you can also see that it's got this transmissive aspect, this repetitional aspect, and did the camera do it again? Okay, I saw it blink.
No,
and
fine.
the holding aspect, or the confining, the magnetic aspect of it. So anytime you see IOU in a word, what you're really dealing with is a contract or a covenant of something, a binding aspect to it. And so when you say, this is almost double, isn't it now, right? Because you've got lig, which is binding, tying, and IOU, which means a covenant or a contract or even a repayment is involved. And then S just means that there's going to be more than one of you, not you, but more than one person involved. It's going to become a body. It's from the standpoint of the esoteric meaning of the letter S, is derived from the idea to add to or to put upon something. Yeah. And we see that. That's actually probably one of the most obvious, isn't it? So now we're breaking this apart a little bit. And we've got 2 aspects to it, don't we? We've got the religion, having to do with the initial appearance of something on the planet. And then we have religious, which really can only happen within the context of a human's engagement with it. Right? Only a human can be religious. Even a cat or a dog or a parakeet can't be religious. Why is that? Why do I say that? Why do you think I say that a cat, a dog, a parakeet, a monkey, these things can't be religious? What do you think about that?
There's no concept of I. They don't have individual personality or a distinguishable, from a human context, a distinguishable soul or an individuality. I mean, and I don't know enough about it to see if they have one. Maybe they do. I just don't recognize it.
Yeah, they would it be fair to say that they have no need for religion?
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about is your left arm religious? Let's say that you're a very devout religious person. You go up to a priest or something, right? A shaman, whatever the case is, and you say, look, I understand that you're religious. What part of you is religious? Is your left arm religious? Right? No. Is your right arm religious? No. How about your nose? Is that religious? No. All right. These are all constituent parts. What part of a person is religion? To me, it really seems like is the missing part. It's the whole, right? We are as a life on this planet, we come incomplete. We have this possibility of actually developing beyond our print, beyond the biological nature of ourselves, and going further. You know, you don't ever see a cat doing workshops on personal development, right? To become more cat. Yeah, imagine. Make my job a lot harder. You know, there's an expression that it's like wrangling cats. Right? Imagine me trying to do a personal development session with a room full of cats. They don't need it though. That's the thing. They just don't need it because they are already in their heaven. They already have it. They are exactly what they should be. The only thing that needs religion is something that's incomplete, in my opinion. Something that still has room to grow, still has room to develop in oneself. And so I could say that if a person counts themselves as being religious, then from that standpoint, it must mean that they recognize in themselves that they are still in a process of evolution and that they can actually move into something new in themselves. And so this brings up for me the idea of permissions. Now, the reason why, I'm going to switch you back here for a minute. You got all this bit? A little bit? Starters? Good.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a bit of a clue in how to think about all the natural laws when it comes to symbol. If you're dealing with anything in the human event, it's always going to fit into a pentagrammic structure because that's what we are. We are a pentagrammic structure. I'm afraid to do the, what's that? Doesn't matter. Anyway, afraid to do that because
the man or something.
Yeah, the Vitruvian man. Yeah, that's right.
There you
Afraid
go.
to do that because the camera will think I'm trying to tell it to do something. But but anytime you approach something from a human standpoint, you have to do it in a pentagrammic template, in a pentagrammic diagram, because that's what we are. That's what fits. You know those children's toys where it's a box and it's got various shapes. It's got a circle hole, a triangle hole, a square hole, a diamond hole, and all that. And then you've got these toys, right, or these bits that you put into the right holes in there. You understand what I mean?
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
give me a verbal because I can't see you, so
Yes.
you see me, but
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. And so that's kind of what it's like when you're dealing with something in the human context, and people miss this a lot. They try and cram, things into the wrong spaces when it comes to humans. So when you talk about a human endeavor, you really have to begin with the pentagrammic structure of things. Now, we've had, you guys have seen this diagram before, and I'm not gonna flush it out a little bit. White, red, blue, yellow, green. Green doesn't want to go today. All right, so we've seen this pentagrammic structure before. From a certain standpoint, this deals in the human permission, okay? And I want to share a concept with you as far as like what's called in this work Model 1, Model 2, and Model 3. Model 1 humans had certain characteristics about them. Think about this for a minute. How long, humans, hominoids have been on this planet for a long, long time, a couple million years. Why did it take a couple million years to think of the concept of a wheel? why would it take that long? Because if I were able to just erase your memory and stick you on some island somewhere, right? You had no recollections of any of the technology that we have whatsoever. How long do you suppose it would take you to come up with the idea of a wheel, or the idea of building a structure to live in, or any of these types of things? I'd give it a couple days, honestly. So why did it take early humans a million years to do that?
They just weren't humans, or they were just not developed enough. I mean, their brains were not that big. Also, I don't think humans have, well, humans as Homo sapiens have been only around for about 100,000 years, or we don't have proof of
Okay,
earlier than that.
I'm okay with that time frame too.
Yeah.
100,000 years. Still, the wheel was about 8,000 years ago. So we're still, short 90,000 years on how long humans have just been clunking around, without something so simple that I'm 100% sure. I mean, we can't obviously verify this experiment here, but I'm 100% sure in myself that if I stuck you there, it wouldn't be long at all before, certainly would not take you 90,000 years if you lived that long to be able to come up with the concept of it. More than likely a week or two. And what this relates to is permissions. A person can only perceive what they are equipped to perceive, right? I'll give you an example. We perceive a color spectrum of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet in general, right? Sometimes a little on either side of those for certain people. Now, I want you to do a little experiment in your mind. Try to think of a color that is not in the range of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. So in other words, you can't think of a neon green because it's still green. You can't think of some sort of dark red almost on the infrared border because that's still based on red. You can't think of a color that isn't within your arrangement, right? That makes sense? Because you don't have the permission to perceive that at this point in time. It's like trying to, try this. Try to look through the back of your head. They say that's what it's like to be blind, by the way. It's not darkness. It's like trying to look through the back of your head. You just can't do it because you don't have that, the ability to connect to something like that. That's outside of the human range of possibility. I suppose with development, you could probably, turn around in your astral body and look out the back of your head, but that's not the point here. The point is that we showed up on this planet with a particular pentagrammic arrangement and a particular permission to do things. And so in ancient times, the only kinds of religions that could ever appear would have to conform to one of these, would have to conform to, so red is moving center, right? What would be I'm not talking about a modern moving center religion. Do you know what I mean by a moving center religion? Something that involves physical movement, like the origins of Kung Fu, for instance, the origins of yoga and things like that, right? But for primitive man, or Model 1 man, probably a better term, this would have been an area that they could grow into. Right? This was a permission, something that they could actually expand into. So anything that would improve their ability to fully utilize their moving center would be religious to them, because that offered an opportunity of growth. Certain things like drumming or even music that causes, right? Music has this effect on humans. It's a very primitive effect. Okay, the second one would have been emotion. Anything that causes one to feel more, to expand into their emotional awareness, like the idea of empathy, right? In this instance, like the idea of clairvoyance, that would have been an aspect of religion. Empathy would have been an aspect of the emotional life, to grow into that, right? And then down here, thinking center. This is where, do you think for a minute that the first person to invent, not to invent, the first person to discover how to make fire, he would have probably been the town shaman, wouldn't he? Or the village shaman, wouldn't he? I mean, that's an incredible ability, right? He pieced something together. You take this and you take this and you bang them together and sparks start to happen. And that may have been just an accidental discovery, but then what caused that person to pile up a bunch of tinder and try it over that in order to build a fire? That would have been magic. That would have been a certain type of mental magic at the time, because we didn't show up on this planet knowing how to do that, right? And so this was an advancement in that aspect. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but the idea is that when we first showed up, we had this pentagrammic print of permission with these 5 centers. And of course, being a newer model, you drop us on a desert island and a deserted island, and we can come up with a wheel in a very short amount of time. We obviously have a more perceptive permission than they did, for the first 90,000 years that they were here. So what that speaks to me is that, yes, we do have this, but this is not the end of it. Now, a couple thousand years ago, 2000, 2500 roughly, we started seeing a shift in the nature of religion. I mean, you can put all the ancient, what I would call religion in a true human standpoint, you can put all the ancient ones in one of these 5 or multiple of these 5. But 2500-ish years ago, something changed. I'm going to draw a small pentagram here and show you what the new permission for human is, just so you keep this symbol in mind. This symbol is actually 2 symbols in one, and it relates to, if you've had the lessons, it relates to the the bar of positive, negative, neutral, and how things cross at vectors in it. And so you can break this symbol apart like this. You've got here kind of a lopsided one there, and then you've got one here like that. You see, when they merge together, it creates, it's these 2 symbols kind of coming together at this vector aspect, if you know what I mean. And we haven't gone into the work too much of it, but you're probably starting to get the sense of silver, gold, things like that, right? If you've been to the electrobics thing, I know you have, then you beginning to understand the natures of silver and gold. But the new permission that began to show up on the planet had to do with metallic qualities. And this is even referenced in the Bible where, there's, I can't remember, I think it might be in the book of Daniel, where they talk about this statue that had, clay feet, bronze legs, and so on and so forth. This is
Daniel.
Is it right? Is it Daniel?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. And so on this bar here, we have silver, and this extends through the bar this way. And so all we can say about this, I'm going to move this to the middle. It'll make more sense. We have silver here at this end, and we have silver low and silver high, high silver and low silver. The difference is between compression and dispersion. It is still silver. It has this kind of vibrancy nature to it, right? And then going perpendicular to this, right, because we have these 2 vectors approaching, you have gold. So you've got high silver, low silver. Now, the nature of this is, the reason why gold isn't necessarily high and low from this standpoint is because it follows these bars down. And so gold takes on a solid, more refined gold, or a less refined gold, but it's still gold, even all the way down this bar. So do you understand? This is the bar of gold coming in this way, or the golden rod, if you will. And this is the mediating aspect of silver a little bit, which is why, actually, incidentally, in electrobics, why you end up with a situation where the positive hand is only 2/3 silver, 1/3 gold, and vice versa. It's because they sit along these bars here. Okay. So what's this one? Well, this one, well, okay, let me back up first of all. So at the appearance of this permission, what you start to see in religion is the introduction, even physically, of various types of metals that have an attractive quality to the actual energetic essence of these metals in the afterlife, right? And so in Buddhism, for instance, you get so much gold, right? Everything in ancient Buddhism, everything is made of gold. All the statues, everything, absolutely everything. It is a very much a gold-based religion. Judaism is just like Egypt in that it's 2/3 gold, 1/3 silver, which kind of gives you an indication of where Judaism was born, right, as it came out of that environment. And each religion has this sort of nature about it, but we've now moved beyond the idea of the white, red, blue, yellow, green structure of the human complex into a silver, gold. Platinum is not yet available, but it will be. It is to some, but it's not available yet. But what we have here on this bar is jewels and gems. Some of you, specifically Market Serena, you've probably heard of, like Gemrod or Geminvine or these types of things. I'm not entirely sure if you've heard of any of the jeweled ways, but they do also come into play. Okay, so it's a whole nother work. But again, here we have this high end and low end. What makes a gem a jewel, or what makes a jewel a gem? Think about the context from our own involvement with it. Is a diamond a jewel if it's still buried? Right? What do you think? I'm gonna switch it back so I can look at you. Is a diamond a jewel if it's still in the earth?
No.
No, it's not. Right? What does it take to become a jewel?
To actually have it in.
It needs to be in a setting where it's recognized as one, which is
Uh-huh.
the human endeavor. So
The
somebody
human involvement. Yeah, exactly right. The human involvement with it. Up until that point, all of these jewels are just gems, right? You've got in the UK, right? You have the crown jewels, don't you? Right? They're not called the crown gems, are they?
No.
I don't
I,
think so.
I don't know
No.
if they're even gems. I mean, gems. I think they're just bits of stone, honestly. Unless they're out of the earth and recognized as one, they're just earth. Yeah,
So
maybe.
right. So from this standpoint, what you have now is a situation where you have either the essence itself or the human involvement with the essence. Right. What do we tend to do with gems? We tend to chip and cut and reveal their facets. Here's what we don't do. Okay, if you talk to a diamond cutter and say, hey, I want you to cut me a diamond in the shape of a cube, he'll probably say no, unless he's just greedy and wants the money. And the reason why he'll say no is because that's not the way diamonds actually work. They have to follow certain cleavage lines and the way that the diamond itself is structured in order to reveal that from the gem standpoint into a jewel standpoint. And so this is a work of refinement, not invention, right? You won't have a jeweler say, yeah, sure, I'll make you a cubic diamond, because it doesn't fit with its purpose. It doesn't fit with its nature. And it would no longer, actually, it would not hold its structure anyway. As soon as you bump it up against something very hard, it would come off at a certain angle that it was intended to. So to understand, the only difference between gems and jewels is the human process and the human involvement within it. And so this becomes the new structure of the pentagram. You've got gem and jewel, and this is interesting down here because there's this crossover point. Then you have silver low, silver high, and gold, and then some unknown aspect over here that is related to low silver jewel gem process. And this is where the religion of Model 2 begins, because We'll go into this. This is a 4 or 5 or longer if you guys want it, if you guys want to work into religion. But you start to see the idea of the gold rod level of development from Buddhism, right? Which has to do with the spine and also has to do with the solar influence in the universe. You get the silver chalice, right? Which all the Knights Templars running around the globe for a couple hundred years trying to find the Holy Grail. That was they never would have found it. They knew this, by the way. They knew they weren't going to find it. That was a show. That was an act. But the silver chalice is related to a particular type of development that is now in the permission spectrum of this version of human, of Model 2, you and me, right? It's now in the permission of it, just like, the ancients would not have been able to conceive of this because they didn't have the template for it to actually exist. They would not be able to find expression in the human until this kind of changeover took place. Now, this is the reason why certain figures were so important to the planet. And Sachin, I'm circling back around to that most profound comment you made at the beginning, is that it probably would have been more significant if I was there. And I wholly agree with you. But if you take, for example, I need to be careful here because, firstly, I don't actually agree that the figure Jesus that we've been spoon-fed today is anything like what that man would have been, okay? Nor do I think that he actually lived at the time that they say he did. But the idea or the metaphysical concept of it is still the same, regardless of when and where this person was or this thing was. There is, when humanity comes up against the point where they have fulfilled all of their permissions, they enter what's known as a stop situation. In other words, they cannot proceed any further until that barrier is broken. Right? You could not take a Model 1, a caveman, and make him into a Christian, no matter how hard you tried. You could not make him into a Buddhist, no matter how hard you tried. He or she never would have gotten it because it's outside. That would have been a stop situation for that type of life. Now, signals are constantly coming into the planet all the time, nonstop. You need to be careful of time because I've got another one later. Signals are constantly coming into the planet, but usually they just pass right through it. And I'm talking about the signal of future religion or the signal of future permissions that open up to humanity, that open up to this model of human, right? Because presumably, if we don't mess up too bad, there might be a Model 3 coming along at some point in time that has even more permissions. But we can't hear it. We can't tune into it. It's like it's outside the band or the spectrum of what our radio, can reach in there. But they're always there, and they're always flooding through the universe. And every so often, at this stop situation moment in human development, a particular person comes along, or even sometimes a particular individual is issued to this planet in order to be the receptacle of that signal so that they may break that stop situation. Yeah, there's this mystery. I'm talking about Christianity. There's this mystery about, why the Roman soldiers pierced him in a certain area that he did and what bled out onto the ground. The idea, if you follow that the blood carries one's astral content, then that symbolically represents spilling that out onto the earth, right? In other words, the earth is now in receipt of that astral content that was not available before. Wasn't part of what she could give repetition to. And so now you get into the aspect of Lygian or Ligios, and then religious or religion, where she now has the signal and she's able to incorporate this by way of repetition into people being born at that time. This also ties into why the apostles at the Last Supper are said to have consumed the blood, right? Because they needed that astral content in order to hold it. Now, here's the particular point when it comes to humans. If you had an angel appear for you right here, right now, right in your very room, unless you had a particular arrangement in yourself, you would not be able to contain what it has to impart. And the reason why is because even though angels, live for tens of thousands of years, and they do live on our planet, they don't have the ability to bring something into the future. The only thing on this planet that can bring something into the future is you. And so this raises the question in oneself when it comes to setting standards about what it is that you want to carry into the future, because you have a choice, right? Sachin, Mark, Serena, you all have a choice. If you find value in something or find a bit of something that you think the future of humanity could use, then you can have an interplay with that. You can bring it into yourself. And unlike an angel, this is the way that humans are more powerful than those types of beings, is that you can actually promote it into the future. This is what I'm doing. This is the work that I'm doing right now, right? Because I don't call myself a teacher. I'm a custodian. I gather the bits that I find to be valuable for the future of humanity. I try to embody them the best I can. And the overspill is what you're doing right now. Whatever I can't contain in myself is what you're in process of right now as you attend these meetings. But when I die, I'm going to leave the print of what I have done in that context for the planet, and the next generation will have an easier time, and so on and so forth with it. I'm gonna pause for questions. That was quite a ramble, quite a run-in to religion. How's this sitting with you? Do you, are you connecting with this?
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
Good. I'll leave it up until we. So, Mark, you look like you have a question.
Yeah. When you mentioned that creation puts, I can't remember the exact words used, but to put someone on the planet,
Yeah.
to do a particular job, are we talking in the area of JC?
Yes and no. So when you say the words JC, what you're saying is Jesus Christ, right? And that
Christ, yeah.
So there's two aspects. That is a dual aspect to
right.
it. Jesus is the form. In other words, the actual physical structure that appeared here. Christ was what attended. So yes, when I say yes, what I mean by that is that he had the specific configuration necessary to be able to contain and process and transmit that force onto the planet. But he as himself didn't really matter, right? The planet would have, in coordination with the sun or in coordination with some of the starry worlds, the planet would have configured an entity here, condensed an entity here that could do that. If it wasn't Jesus, it could have been Bob, right? I mean, it doesn't, the Jesus part doesn't matter. But yeah, that's the way it happens. And, this gets very esoteric at times, but in reality, if you look at the actual evidence in creation, this is exactly the way everything happens. Because, scientists ever since Darwin have been digging up fossils, going through everything and trying to find the missing link. Between, there's not something that's like half monkey, half human, or there's not something that's, half fish, half amphibian, right? They've never found such a thing. They're always like, they know that at an early stage on the planet's development of life, that it was just vegetation. And then all of a sudden, it's, all of a sudden, just like that, it's single cells. They just appear. Or I'm sorry, other way around, right? You understand? Single cells start, and then vegetation, And then all of a sudden you've got sea creatures. And then all of a sudden you have amphibians and mammals, and then all of a sudden humans. But they can't find these gaps in here because what they don't understand is that it is not a chemical reaction that creates this. It is a union of forces outside, and it's a reciprocal aspect. Think of it this way: the planet gets the permission. Now, what's religious to a cell? I'll tell you what's religious to a cell: becoming two, right? Splitting and doubling, because then it becomes a multicellular organism. That would then have been religion for a cell, expanding into that new permission. But yeah, I mean, everything, scientists are baffled because everything seems to just go in starts, you know? All of a sudden there's something new here. And that's because the permission condenses here when the planet's ready to house such a thing, and when she needs to grow from the energy and attainments that that take place with that. And then the universe learns from this, you see? So the universe got really good at making plants here on the planet. And that information went straight up the ray of creation. And the giant computer in the sky, known as God, said, okay, that's really interesting. This is what they can do. What if we now give them legs, right? Because a lot of plants die here, right? That's the downfall. You know, plant can't run away from an earthquake, right? And so, okay, what if we give it legs? And so it sends this kind of signal back down the ray of creation. The sun goes, okay, got it. You know, I'm going to put it in order for amphibians, and boom, there it is, right? And it shows up on the planet. And then frogs are hopping around and whatnot. And you see, so it's this kind of back and forth sort of thing, up and down the ray of creation, which is why the moon reflects, right? Because everything that kind of continues to go down the ray of creation like that, the moon, if we didn't have a moon, we could not have life here, because it would not be able to reflect that experience and knowledge of what's happening down here back up the ray of creation, so that someone else or someone up there can figure out how to do it better. Yeah. All right, we are about 7 minutes out. Let's begin to kind of wrap this up, wind it in. Has this been useful? Has it been interesting, or, you know, make you think?
Yes, it has. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can it be part two?
There will be part as many as you can handle.
Okay, good.
Pierce has a very passionate aspect when it comes to this sort of thing. So yeah, for as long as you're interested, I'll keep rambling. Okay.
Okay, good. That's brilliant. Yeah.
Sachin, how does all this sit with you? Does it cause you to think?
Oh yeah, no, this cause I've been thinking of this for a long time, and this puts a lot of good structure around it. A lot of good structure around what I've been thinking, what I'm looking for. It is, we haven't had the one-on-one meeting yet, so I'm trying to juggle the practicalities of life.
Yes.
I think this is easily, Sachin, go somewhere for 6 months and all you do is study. That
Yeah.
Like, let me go to theology school and study this. That's the level of commitment and value that is needed for something like this. It's easy.
I fully agree with the sentiment, but not necessarily with the approach, because Sachin, sitting there as he is today, already has the permission for silver chalice, for gold rod, for silver beacon, for platinum arch, maybe on the way, and for the gem work and the jeweled work and so on and so forth. My point is that you as a human being on this planet right now, you don't need to go into a church or into a synagogue or into anything. In fact, you know, the thing about churches, right? They draw them. I'm going to switch you back here. It's be a good way to wrap things up, and maybe. Let's do this. This will leave you with something to think about, I think. And then you got preacher, audience, okay, all in here. This is a church. Now, why is this there? That steeple. Are you over here? Yeah, you're over here. Why? Why is the steeple there? What happened? Right? Because churches have steeples. Mosques have domes. And there's a difference and there's a reason for it. I'll shorten this up a bit. Some esoteric soul or another figured out a long time ago that certain shapes will attract elemental life. We haven't talked much about elemental life, but certain shapes and certain materials and this sort of thing can actually contain and hold an elemental life. You know, some of the natural magic is kind of based on this, where, you know, the evil magician or whatever, you know, sprinkles honey and milk and all that, and then, you know, has this kind of copper and amber contraption going on over here that enables it to capture this entity, this elemental entity, this life form, and kind of put it in here, right? And then he runs away to it and he goes to the church and he goes and releases it up into here. And that's where it sits, because now it's trapped based on the architecture, based on the materials of everything used, okay? So then what a priest does in this context is he gathers everybody around, and every Sunday he shouts and screams and complains and, you know, causes hellfire and burning and everything else, and gets people in this excited, agitated state, while all at the same time he is poking at this elemental that sits up in the roof there, and it's raining silver or gold or whatever the case might be. It's raining silver down, okay, on him. And then through his voice, he's able to project that into the audience, and everyone's like, you know, gets this big blast of silver from the elemental. But the thing is, you don't need that. You don't need to do that anymore, because as you're now structured, right, that's sort of a bridging from model 1 to model 2 kind of thing, right? Where these people had pentagrammic alignments and were completely empty when it came to the gem, the jewel, and the silver gold type of pentagrammic alignments. And so they needed that at that time. That helped. But nowadays, if you go out in the morning, during or in the evening, during the times of sunrise and sunset, you get more of that kind of force coming down, because that's when the planet does its silver rain. You know, when the birds go bananas in the morning, that's silver rain coming down onto the planet. She already has that permission. Now it's just washing you in it. So you don't need to go to church whatsoever to get that. Same thing happens at night with respect to gold when it turns to dusk. So yes, I do agree that a certain type of study is important, but it has to be done from within you, not at a place, because you now have the equipment to be able to detect and utilize silver, gold, and whatever else might rain down.
Yeah,
Okay.
that makes sense.
Yeah, you got it. Good. All right. Well, let us go ahead and wrap it up, because I have to get wound in for the next one in about an hour here. So,
Awesome.
all right.
Thanks.
Thank you all so much. Have a good rest of your day. Hopefully I'll see you all soon here.
Okay.
Thanks.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.